So my interest in coming here initially was the quilts over at G's Bend.
Yes.
But you make quilts as well.
Yes.
So how are your quilts different from the girls at G's Bend or the ladies at G's Bend?
They're very different, and people ask me if I was inspired by the G's Bend quilters to quilt, and I can't say that I was. Not that it mattered, but I've always loved quilts since I was very small, and I admire what those ladies do very much, and especially, back during the Depression, the 30s and all, when it was a matter of survival for them. And I'm rather familiar with G's Bend because I worked for the Farmers Home Administration, which came along after the Farm Security. And
it does seem quite interesting that the first group seemed to be the Freedom Bee quilters, and then that seems to have disappeared a little bit.
Yes.
And now the Quilt Collective. But when I went there, I felt that maybe there was a little bit of rivalry between the two.
I think maybe there was. I don't know. That very well I could have been. It seems like, at my age, I remember sometimes. I've heard that in conversation and that view expressed, but I couldn't say how or where or when. Because I've lived so long. But I do think there was some rivalry between. I think one could consider themselves from Alberta.
Okay.
And one from down in the Bend, down in G's Bend. But their quilts are certainly different.
Very different.
Very different. Very creative.
Yeah.
My quilts are not that creative. They are traditional. I use log cabin and 9-patch and Irish chains and that sort of thing. I go further than that, but I like traditional fabrics. That's not so traditional, but I like a lot of reproduction of feed sacks. There were 6,000 patterns of feed sacks. Did you all have feed sacks in England?
I'm sure they did, but I didn't grow up in a...
Well, there wasn't the degree of farming, I guess, in England, because there just wasn't the space.
Exactly.
But the way that it started was, of course, nobody had anything. I can remember that because I came along right after the Depression, and there was a lot of conversation. But the producers, the millers, realized that if they put designs on their sacks, that they would buy that rather than a brand without it.
Sure.
So but they weren't that pretty, but they were better than Purina on the back,
Exactly.
And anyway. Now they started back in the 70s reproducing these patterns. They're more colorful and prettier than the patterns were, but they still are very nostalgic to me because I can remember the feed sacks. I never had clothes made out of them. I don't think. I also use a lot of Civil War reproductions of fabrics from the last half of the 18th century. I'm very much interested in the history of the textile industry and how in England it was the start of the Industrial Revolution, and then it grew and the demand for cotton increased, but they couldn't use it because they couldn't get the seeds out. I mean, they used it, but it was too expensive.
Okay.
It took one man, a lint picker, a day to pick 1 pound of lint cotton. And that was but anyway, that interests me a lot, and so I try to kind of reflect that in my quilts. But all of a sudden, the invention of the cotton gin, there was cotton in an abundance and very reasonably priced, and that's when when the whole world changed. I believe it was the Farm Security that bought the land up and sold it to the folks over there. I think they sold. They had made the town, and everybody got a lot and a house, and then there was, I think, 40 acres maybe out in the fields and all. I'm not sure, but we did a lot had a lot of conversation and all with the folks from over there.
So, do you dye any of your own fabrics?
No, I used to, but I don't anymore. Okay. I used to dye some. I will if if I don't like much white in a quilt. I get some with the white background, maybe in a print, or I will dye it maybe in tea or something to make it a beige color.
Okay.
But so far as dyeing any, no, I don't. I have friends who do, and when I was younger I did a little more, but I've never had much success with that.
So your show tomorrow, you have. Am I correct in saying you have 70 quilts then?
No, the last count was 59.
Oh, 59. Okay, but still a lot of quilts.
Yeah, I thought it would be 60, but I do have 3 rugs. One is woven on a loom, and one is sewn on the sewing machine, and one is kind of crafted. But I just love to do things, with my hands. I've always enjoyed it.
So how many shows is this then? How do you do one a year? Or
no, this is the first time.
Oh, okay.
I've entered in quilt shows. I won a 2nd place one time, but not me. I've only entered 2 because our guild doesn't do. Well, we do have exhibits.
Okay.
The one in Tom. I go every other week to Thomasville.
Okay.
And then the odd week I come to go to one in Camden, and with a group of ladies.
Okay.
But no, but this is the first time it's just been my quilts. I was really surprised when they approached me about it. I don't know whether it's going to be any interest in it or not.